Welcome to the State of Affairs in partnership this time with Intelligencer Today, a brand new global media portal that was just launched, and we will give you more information on that. But very happy to welcome back my dear friend, Sean Stone, renowned filmmaker, documentary filmmaker especially. He's got some amazing work behind him. He's been an actor most of his life, being in his father's movies, Oliver Stone's movies. But then he's created some interesting work on his own and has delved into topics that not many people want to talk about and are afraid to, quite frankly, tackle. So, Sean, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Good to see you again in our lovely Naples. And something came to my attention recently that I had to bring up to you. And, otherwise, intelligent and well-meaning people sometimes seem to fall for things that I found surprising. There was a really interesting accusation that was hurled in your direction by one named Benjamin Fulford. Now, I do not know much about him, except the homework that I've done prior to this conversation. But if you don't mind, just start with that. Who is Benjamin Fulford?
I only know Ben Fulford in a limited context. Now, he came to my attention, I think, 10 to 12 years ago, because he had done an interview with David Rockefeller, right, for like one of the Asian news. You probably know which newspaper or something. He was basically in Japan. He's been Japan based for a long time, and so Fulford has long been someone that's conspiracy oriented around things like the Black Dragon societies and various various things that are harder to know what's real, right? There's a lot of interesting things. I do believe, I believe there's dragon societies and there's different levels to the conspiracy, and some are much more ancient and secret society oriented. So Fulford has been in part of that network, let's say, of speaking, supposedly speaking for these groups, Yakuza, right? Things like this.
Yes.
He's based in Japan. So I became aware of him back then, saw some of his things, some of it, seems a little bit, he's someone that kind of repeats a lot of stuff. Sometimes he's being fed information, sometimes it's off, sometimes it's not. But back then, even like people were talking about the guy was cracked. They were making fun that he was like a clone. That there was a guy called Former White Hat, which was doing posts kind of like some of the Q stuff. This was Former White Hat was back in 2010 and 11, was doing all kinds of posts about the looking glass technology, time travel, secret space program. And he was saying Fulford was like a clone back then. He's like, the guy's been taken out and replaced. So we always kind of joked. But I interviewed Fulford once in 2020, I think, or 2021 or 2020, I interviewed him about kind of what was going on with, just from his perspective. And I never met him. So that's all I can say about Fulford, as far as like what I know about his background. I don't know that much, except to say that he's, relatively big in the conspiracy community. I think some people I know have met him, but I've never personally met him.
Right. Interesting. So people subscribe to his quote unquote intel, and somebody who is close to me and from some of our circles sent a message to me and said, "Holy Jesus, your friend Sean is deep state. Fulford intel says that he just had somebody murdered." And I just thought that was crazy and insane. So of course you and I had to have a conversation about that. But the person that they are alleging you had murdered is somebody that we do know. He was a Marine intel officer, and you worked closely with him. It is Robert David Steele. So what is this horrible insinuation all about?
Yeah, so this was something that when Steele passed away, I was working for him with two documentaries that he was producing, that I was directing. One was called Best Kept Secret. That was a docuseries that I directed. And then the other one was called The Paradigm of Money, which was something I produced. And it was, basically both of these things were his initiatives. He raised the money for them. He crowdsourced. He had people like 107 on board. And this was back in 2020 into 2021, right, when he was helping us with the financing. So he was producing this with me, and then, as you know, as people know, he basically was he was doing a tour, Reawaken America,
Yes.
or something like that, with a bunch of people. And I know Sasha Stone and others walked out.
Mm-hmm.
They had a falling out. I think Lee Dundas and others had a falling out with him and left the tour, but Steele continued the tour and apparently got sick. He went to the hospital. They basically said he got COVID. They put him on a vent and he died. Now, we all know what the process is. Once they put you on a vent, you're pretty much dying in a hospital. So that didn't surprise me. The idea that he could have been poisoned during the tour, absolutely possible. I don't have any knowledge of it. I just know that, again, it was very suspicious that he got pneumonia and decided to go to the hospital. Maybe he thought he had no other choice. I don't know. I wasn't in communication with him at that time because I was working on the film and I didn't expect him to die, obviously. So he goes to the hospital again, puts on a vent. We know what happens as a result. Out of the blue, Fulford messaged me in that time period right after he passed away and said, MI6 says you told them Robert David Steele was killed because he was caught passing secret documents. And I go, first of all, who is MI6? I don't know. I don't know who's MI6 you're talking to. That's a very vague, something stupid. Like I talked to somebody who was CIA and the CIA says, well, that's bullshit. You talk, who's your source? I don't know who MI6 is. I don't talk to MI6. And I never said that Steele was passing secret documents. And I literally responded to him. I said, what kind of BS are you getting into? The only secret is the name of my series, which is Best Kept Secret. So somehow I think Fulford mixed up the fact that my docu-series, Best Kept Secret, was secret documents. That's how cracked this guy is.
Interesting.
So that's how I responded to him, right? This was like 2 years ago.
And I mean, honestly, to me, from just reading the outline of what he peddles out there is, 1099 for this many secrets, and if you subscribe full on 1999, you get those intel from the deepest state, which again, as I said, some otherwise very intelligent, bright people fall for this, and whatever they read on the internet somehow becomes the truth.
And that's the point. I mean, we have to use our discernment. We have to be able to say, like I said, you can make allegations. I hear it all the time. Mossad killed Kennedy. Okay, who specifically? It's like people are just so happy to repeat stuff and start to state things like repeat things that I'm all for. Like, show me the evidence. Let me come to my own conclusion. Let me think for myself. Right. And with this thing about Fulford in his thing that you showed me, he says that I paid Steele to go on a tour. I didn't pay Steele to go on a tour. He was paying me to do a documentary. It's like, I don't have that kind of money to pay someone a lot of money to go on a tour. I'm like, what does this guy think? I don't, I don't have that kind of money to pay Robert David Steele to go on a tour. Reawaken America, which they raised, I'm sure, a good amount of money while, touring. That's what they do. They sell tickets and stuff. But there
was a story actually out of the tour that allegedly $300,000 was missing. That was the
I wouldn't know because I wasn't on the tour.
All of that.
Maybe he thinks I'm Sasha Stone because Sasha was on the tour. I'm not Sasha.
That was initially what I thought. I really have a feeling that maybe they mixed you up with Sasha Stone, or who knows.
It's possible. I mean, there's all kinds of. I remember that Robert had some financial issues at the very end. I do remember vaguely because he'd been financing our documentaries, and he was talking about doing more. I mean, that's why the idea that I would have any motivation to want him gone is ridiculous. He was literally talking about doing more documentaries with me. So it's like, I was, we were talking. He was working with Cynthia McKinney on a documentary when he passed away that I don't think she ever finished, about the presidential. I think it was about the rigged elections. So that was actually the next one in the line because we'd already done the two, and then he was going to finance more documentaries. So I remember that, there was some lack of clarity in terms of some finance. I don't know because I wasn't part of the tour and I wasn't on his books. He sent me money for the documentaries. I never looked at his books. So I don't have any knowledge of what money was missing or who could have been involved or anything like that. Because again, it's like separation. He's the executive producer. He sends me the money. I make the movie. I deliver the movie. That's the separation of power, you could say, delegation of powers. And And so again, it didn't make any sense to say that I would want Steele gone in any way. I mean, he was my benefactor, you could say at that time.
Right.
And he was helping, obviously we dedicated the Best Kept Secret series to him. And then the
Fascinating
whole thing is just
but
crazy because
I kind of want to ask you though, because people are in I think desperation for answers, and
right.
we obviously are in a really strange period of time that all of us are going through, kind of living in a matrix almost. People are seeking answers, so it's no surprise that we get into these wild conspiracies and Q and this and that, and you mentioned the murder of JFK. There is a lot going on. Why are people so desperate at this point to actually believe anything that's being thrown at them?
Well, I mean, look, we are breaking through consciousness to a place where we're realizing that the world is not what we thought it was, right? And there's room to be suspicious, of course, but I'm also of the mind that like you can't be paranoid, right? Be suspicious, be aware. I mean, you could even say like, I want to finish on the Fulford point before we get into this. So Fulford, I think what triggered him somehow was my visiting Tokyo because I was in Japan. And I reached out to him because I know he lives there. I said, "Hey, let's meet. Let's have dinner." And when I reached out to him, and I think I sent you the email exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, he wanted me to come to some hot spring spa. Basically, the Japanese are very famous with their why am I blanking on the name of it? Anyway, the Japanese, saunas, right? They're very famous. Sure. So he wanted me to come to one that was outside of Tokyo, and he said that there was some secret there that he was going to show me, and I basically said, I don't know if I have time because I'm only, was only in and out of Tokyo. I think I spent like basically like a day each time I was passing through. I'm like, I don't have time necessarily to go to the onsen. That's what they're called, onsen, outside of Tokyo to meet you. By the way, if anyone was setting anyone up, it was him setting me up to go there. He says I was trying to set him up. He was trying to invite me to this onsen. I said, look, I'm just basically staying in Tokyo. Can you just meet me? I suggested let's meet downtown in the electronics district, basically, or somewhere that's just like we can grab a bite because I wanted to see the electronics district. I never specified where. And then he said some weird, he ended up texting me some weird stuff about like he has some girls that come to visit him and he has to check with them if he's allowed to come see me. And then basically says, oh, they don't want to break the routine. I don't know if what the story is. This is really weird, right? He's just like,
it is very odd.
Sound like his handlers. And I'm like, there's not a lot, he's like, oh, we don't want to break the routine. I'm like, okay, well, maybe we'll just do another interview. And that's where I left it. So then this whole thing that I was trying to like lure him to set him up. I mean, I didn't even tell him where to meet. I just literally said, let's just meet and have dinner. You tell me where. I don't know Tokyo. You tell me the location.
Right.
So it was really strange to see this whole thing that like I flew to Japan to like set him up. It's just like so outlandish.
Well, that is what he's selling for monthly subscription.
There you go. So this is very dangerous. So that's the point, of course, we all want answers. We all want to get to the bottom of like, who is the deep state and where are they and how nefarious is it? And it is nefarious, no doubt. But you get these kind of people that just repeat. Now, maybe someone did tell him that, oh, Sean's after you. Now, who is that person? Is it some MI6 operative? Well, you're going to trust that just because it's MI6, it's a good source. I mean, people have to wake up a little bit, right? They've got to know that just because someone says, oh, the CIA agent told me, that doesn't make it true. And you have to be discerning. And that's the thing to me is like, we're in a time, of course, people want answers. They want to know. I mean, it's so difficult to know what's true. I mean, look at what happened around Sound of Freedom. I mean, you have in one instance, a project that's, that seems like it's an important story. On the other hand, everyone involved ends up, you're looking at it more and more. You're like, well, everyone involved has kind of like dirty hands. I don't know if you've looked at like some of the allegations of.
I heard some of that. And I did watch Sound of Freedom a couple of times, actually. It was here in Naples. And then I saw it recently on Prime. Right. Again. But interesting allegations again with people involved.
No, not just the Slim family involved, financing, which I knew about before. But the most important thing is that the guy himself was I'm blanking on his name right now. There were all kinds of allegations that he was actually, how do you say, he was not completely clean with how he
Right.
was treating the women or the underage, children and stuff. So you get all
Well,
this
so
kind
there's a
of
lot
allegation.
going on about obviously pedophilia and everything that came around Epstein and did he kill himself and Ghislaine Maxwell and this Lolita Express and the Epstein Island. And I mean, there's so much information that is coming at people all at once. And everybody's now finally aware of it. And I agree with you. It's very difficult to now, iron out what is true, what is not true, what is made believe. A lot of grifting also going on the side because people are now making a buck based on peddling these stories because everybody's hungry for
But the
something.
point is that it's so easy to be divisive, right? Like I mean,
It is.
turn around, you're like, okay, well now people are all they're slandering Mike Flynn. Oh, Mike Flynn is actually he's an agent of
I saw that too.
whatever, I don't know, the FBI as he's a double agent. I mean, all this, it's like you get endless allegations. Now, one thing I've learned over the years, I think that it's if you are in the intelligence world, or let's say trying to get to the bottom of things, sometimes it helps to make an accusation and see how people respond. I do recognize that. The problem is when you're making accusations publicly that people are getting married to that version of events or that story, right? And they're not actually getting to the bottom of things. So at one level, with intelligence and stuff, what you do is you make the accusation, and then someone will say, listen, you guys have the story all wrong. And then they come and they tell you a whole other element that you didn't know, but you had to make the accusation to try to get to that new insight, let's say.
But it's also a convenient way to actually deflect and point people's attention towards some things so that they would look away from what is actually going on.
We're all, see, the thing is that we're all participants in what you can consider like black ops and like psychological ops, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because we're basically part now of like the social media has made everyone party to the intelligence network. That is to say, the news media. The news media has always been intelligence. That's what people have to get. Like the news has always been part of the intelligence world, right? And who's better than a journalist, someone who travels, who talks to people, right? To be a CIA asset. It's perfect. It's a perfect cover, right? But now that everyone is on social media with their own platform, speaking their truth, their insights, their points of view, in a sense, we're all party to these psyops, and then you end up with like what's real and what's not. I mean, I've been accused of being part of Q, and it's like based on my relationship with people like Steele and 107 and I guess you name it, like I've said,
I've
like,
heard that white hats are in
right,
control and President Trump is still the president,
right.
and we just don't know it. He doesn't know it.
Well, it's not that he doesn't know. It's not that he doesn't know it. First of all, like I'm very much some of the perspective that you're dealing with secret space programs. You're dealing with Space Force coming in. Space Force is old. Trump didn't invent Space Force. It's
Right.
been there.
This is not new.
This is old. It's an old secret space program, and they've been brought out for a reason. And so they're different. Look, if you understand the United States as a corporation, a lot of this becomes less mysterious.
Yes.
So Trump is the president of the republic, and the republic is what's being, how do you say,
Dismantled completely.
No, the republic is being revitalized. The corporation is being dismantled. You see
Well,
that?
currently, but it was the other way around. Now that we have woken up to the facts.
Yeah, the republic was dead. It was just like defunct, or it was like in abeyance, you could say. It was just in a state of like disuse. And then it's been slowly like putting the republic back into order. That's the way I see it. And so you have different realities taking place because you have a corporate United States and everything that goes with the corporation, and that's the deep state essentially. And then you have the republic and that, more the constitutional United States. And so when it comes to like what's really going on, you look around, you just go, I'm a big believer in, there's like Joe Biden is a dysfunctional clone. Like you can't tell me this guy is, who doesn't have the same ears as the original is just an actor. I mean, maybe it's an actor who's like intentionally goofing things up to make it look silly, or more likely it's like you're talking about a clone or something that's, that's meant to resemble the president. but essentially it's designed to kind of help people wake up to the fact that this reality is scripted and staged, and the president does not run the country.
So, speaking of the president running or not running the country, we are in an election year. A lot going on, and I feel a lot more will be going on in this parallel universe that we are living and experiencing and being a part of. But I wanted to go back to something because I think it was brought up as part of this Fulford conversation, which were, and I know you worked so much on issues such as these through your documentaries. What do you make of the tunnels in New York? Because that somehow disappeared.
I mean, look, if you go off of what, Jason Shirk has done some interesting interviews with this guy, who's supposed to be an insider. Shirka believes him. I tend to think that there's something there. These interviews that they've conducted, Disclosure, right? The Disclosure series, I think it's called, Unified Network. And the guy talks about, seeing that, that they were involved with taking down some of these tunnels. I think that makes sense. I remember, like, right when COVID first was happening, it was like there was a lot of strange activity going on around some of these locations. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess in my heart, I want to believe that this is true, that we basically, yes, we've been clearing out and taking back a lot of these underground bases, a lot of the, just overall, like the battle isn't over, but for all intents and purposes, it's like, this is like the last gasp for the dark cabal.
I hope and I pray that's true. And you are right. A lot of people have come to realize that we do not live in the world that we've been told we've been living in. But so what do you anticipate, obviously, getting into this election? And I think Robert Kennedy Jr. is an interesting piece of the conversation in terms of what he's been talking about,
Sure.
and obviously what his family experienced, and you having somehow firsthand knowledge, obviously, through your father and the films that he's made on this subject. What do you make of him as a candidate, and how is that going to impact where we are with Biden, Trump, etc.?
Look, I'm someone that doesn't think there's going to be an election. I don't, or if there is, I don't think they're letting Trump back into the corporate side. But I'm also very optimistic. I feel like whatever plays out, it's ultimately for our best. It's going to be, it's going to be surprises, more revelation. Ideally, you're going to, look, there's even this Texas border thing. What it's bringing up again is this issue of the state versus the federal government.
Yes.
And since the first Civil War, we've kind of demolished this notion of states' rights, but the actual founding and the constitutional United States was based in the states' rights. It was United States, plural, not the United States as a singular federal entity. So it's all been inverted since then, you see. That's why the federal government's gotten so much power. They've gotten away with all this crazy, amount of spending and seizing of our gold and silver, and basically, putting us all into their promissory notes that are borrowed from the Federal Reserve. I mean, it's a completely crooked system, the amount of spending that the federal government does. But what are the Democrats? Democrats are mostly they're mostly beholden to the government. They're public servants. They're working for the government. That's why they all want big government, because it's basically that's who's paying them. They're like corporate,
Right.
The children of the United States corporation. I think that is what has to go. That was being dismantled. And so however that plays out, I have faith that people are waking up to this essentially authoritarianism. That's really what the part of it is.
But so the United States corporation obviously plays somewhat a central role in all of this globally as well. And you are right, the corporation is being dismantled, but given that they feel they are threatened with all of the wars starting again and the world almost imploding, it feels like a wounded animal or a wounded monster who is going to take a lot of victims down with them. And it seems that's the path that we're on. I mean, if you look at just some of the tweets that sitting United States senators sent about hitting Iran and hit Tehran, and you've been to Iran, you've been all over. What do you anticipate in terms of that type of implosion? I mean, we are consistently on a verge of not only World War III, I believe we have been in it. And you and I mentioned that Albert Pike letter several times in the past, and all of that is coming true, but nuclear war and so much more.
Mm.
Are we there, or?
I don't think we're going to see it. I don't think we're going to see a nuclear war. I don't think so. I think that this is the lightest. What we're seeing is the lightest, softest version. It's kind of like in ways like COVID was the lightest, softest version of a World War III.
Mm-hmm.
What we're going to see is like the lightest, softest version of events. That's the way I feel.
Interesting. So
they're
like, pretty much done, and the Republic is being revived.
Well, it's not to like belittle like the dead in Gaza, for example, but if you contextualize that, like if there was that much outrage for like Iraq, for example, how many people were killed in Iraq in the invasion? People have been killed in Afghanistan. Like the fact that we put a magnifying glass on this, this number of deaths, it shows you where the consciousness is. You can't get away with a mass murder anymore. You imagine,
and that's an interesting point because, yep. But we have conditioned. When you look at, and interesting you bring that up, because when you look at what happened at different universities, like Harvard, for example, it seems that so much money and so much conditioning has gone into this, but now it's coming to bite them. And you're right, they can't even, those who fund this cannot get away with it anymore, even though they've created their own enemy, essentially.
Yeah. That's the point. That's why it's funny, because the Democrats are the ones that are facing the most backlash within their party over like Gaza, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's like it's all going to come back and bite them. Like you said, they've sown their seeds for their own destruction.
And that's their undoing. They always overplay their hand. One more thing that I wanted to discuss, and you did bring up Gaza and Israel and all of the things that are happening. Looking at Europe and looking at what's going on in France and Germany with the farmers, and do you anticipate, and then the expectation of what's going on in Texas, do you think we are going to get to that point in the United States where, the truckers and the farmers, they've had enough? What type of, is there some sort of civil disobedience that we can expect that will actually be the final nail in the coffin of the corporation?
Somehow, I mean, it really could be the border thing. It could be the border. It could be I thought it would be guns, right? Because I think that their overreach is going to be like trying to take away guns, and that's something that won't go. Border, I think could be a trigger. Let's see what happens here, because basically saying, hey, the U.S. government, we don't, we let everyone in, and the state's like, it's still our state.
Right.
We get to decide it. No, at some point the state's got to say, hey, we got to decide who comes into our state. That's kind of where I think you're going to see this dispute turning.
And then how do you see? Because again, both of us come from big cities and we understand what's going on in the cities versus where we are. You look at Chicago, you look at all of the migrants that are being schlepped into these cities. I watched something yesterday, a guy from New York, he's been living in a hotel for 7 months, getting 3 meals a day. our own Americans don't get that treatment. I mean, there's homeless people all over the place, veterans, but yet here we are funding this type of immigration and shipping these people all over our beautiful cities. LA, Chicago, New York, you name it. Do you anticipate something going on in the cities?
Ah, well, they definitely keep pushing the cyber attack concept, don't they? It's like this
True
new
that.
Obama movie. Then I've heard that they're doing another movie with Robert De Niro playing the president. There's a TV series about a cyber attack. So they're certainly pushing this narrative of cyber attack, and the shutdown of the cities because, yeah, I mean, I think if we're talking about like basically it's the way I see it is this: the more the cabal pushes an agenda, it actually ends up just being their own death sentence, like COVID. It was like the more they pushed for lockdowns, the more it killed their credibility, their economy, right? Their support. They could end up doing the same thing by trying to like shut down these cities or something, or shut down the economy. It's all going to backfire because the way I look at it is, oh, you want to shut us out of your economy? Guess what you do? You just created a whole new economy. The same way that, oh, so we're going to censor you on YouTube. Great. We'll shift to these other platforms. That's the nature of the human being, right? We, in many ways, because we've grown so comfortable with a monopolistic economy, right? But we still want capitalism. We don't want socialism. So the more the monopolies can become like, oh, we're going to become socialistic, the more the human spirit says, oh, wait, no, we're actually just going to create something alternative. And that's why I think this whole thing is going to break, because they're going to try to do something to consolidate their power. And it's all it's going to do is basically explode in their face and create a whole new system. Kind of like what, in many ways, like the BRICS are laying the foundation, right, from the end of the petrodollar. This economist, just, very famous, what was his name? He just retired. I saw the New York Times even was talking about him. He was saying, look, this is the end of the petrodollar economy. You can't have countries basically saying, hey, we're going to use other denominations, like the Chinese yuan or gold-backed currencies or whatnot to actually sell oil. It's done. Your whole concept of America being able to deficit spend indefinitely and run these deficits because everyone has to trade for dollars to buy oil. If that's gone, what does the U.S. have? I mean, we have other sectors of our economy, but so much of our global dominance was predicated on this idea that everyone needed dollars to buy oil. Once you start to go to other denominations, that just killed the petrodollar system.
Which is actually a wonderful thing, that human ingenuity, that we will always find other ways. And that is ending this on a positive note. That is something that gives us hope that we're going to come out of this and start fresh and indeed revive the Republic.
Yeah.
Thank you for being